Rabbi Eliezer, the rabbis, about dwelling in one sukkah, the whole sukkah, or could you switch sukkahs? Can you build a new sukkah on Chol Hamoed? We learned about Koton Shenisgadel, a Ger Shenisgayer, child becomes an adult, a Ger convert becomes Jewish. Are they allowed to build a sukkah in the middle of sukkahs, according to Rabbi Eliezer? Of course, the rabbis have no problem with it, but Rabbi Eliezer seemed to in general had a problem with that. But in that scenario, he said it's not a problem. Also, it was not a problem if the sukkah fell down, to be able to rebuild it. And this was learned from different psukim. The fact that a ger shenisgayer katan shenisgadol, the rabbis didn't hold of this whole thing. They also learned it from psukim, different verses about sukkahs, where they came up with their rulings. Where was their source? Their rulings. This is based on different psukim. It's either sukkahs, it says singular. Maybe that means you could only have one sukkah, the whole sukkahs. And that was Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. It spells sukkahs without the two vavs. And then you have the rabbis learning from the Kol HaEzrach B'Yisrael that it includes anyone who is a resident of the Yidden can dwell in the sukkah, in the same sukkah, that all Yidden could dwell in the same sukkah. And we went through a little discussion yesterday about borrowed sukkahs versus partnered sukkahs. Is there, if you own a portion of it, would that be a problem? Rashi and Tosfos, Rashi goes out of his way to figure out how you see that you could dwell in a borrowed sukkah. Maybe it's talking about that you're a partner. So Rashi says, well, the sukkah that could fit all of Klal Yisrael is definitely it's below the cost of a pruta for each person. It would be so cheap for each yid that they wouldn't even be called partners. And if the pasuk is allowing all yidden to be in the same sukkah, it must be that they're called borrowers. They have permission to come in and eat in their sukkah. So to borrow a sukkah, you see, you're allowed to. And this, of course, was the rabbi's view, and it's a question on Rabbi Eliezer. How does he learn? So he uses Kol HaEzrach B'Yisrael to teach about people who are Ezrach. They are residents. They've become residents. Kol HaEzrach B'Yisrael. Anyone that's become a resident, even in the middle of Sukkot, they can build a sukkah. They celebrate Sukkot. So anyone who becomes a resident is eligible for the sukkah. That's an exception to the rule, because normally you need to have a sukkah that you're going to use for 7 days, and here they're going to be building it in the middle of Sukkot. But that pasuk is the exception to the rule. And I mentioned yesterday that it doesn't seem like Rabbi Eliezer even allows a person who had an emergency to use this type of exception. It's only for you weren't able to build your sukkah, too bad. You become Jewish, that fits the pasuk, Kol HaEzrach B'Yisrael. Then you have the pasuk, the verse says, if you're a resident, you can build a sukkah. What about someone who was always a resident before, didn't become a resident? No, the way he's learning is Kol HaEzrach B'Yisrael. Anyone who becomes a resident can dwell in a sukkah, even if you're not going to have the full 7 days. Boy, I was a resident. I was there. I had some emergency. Erev Sukkot, I couldn't build my sukkah. Too bad. You become Jewish. You become an adult. You mentioned yesterday, even a bar mitzvah boy becomes biblically obligated when he gets 2 pubic hairs. That's when he's considered a real adult. Then he becomes obligated. So even though in the middle of Sukkot, he's going to be obligated in dwelling inside a sukkah. So that's the dialogue between Rabbi Eliezer and the rabbis, basically the two opinions and the way they each of them learned it and sourced it in the different psukim. And then the Gemara talked about a story of Rabbi Eloi. And Rabbi Eloi went to be Makabel Pnei Rabbi Eliezer, his Rebbe in Lud. So Rabbi Eliezer lived in Lud, and Rabbi Eloi went to visit him. It was on Yontiv. And Rabbi Eliezer told him, you would think he would have said, "Thank you so much for coming." He says, well, you're not resting on Yom Tov. I can't believe you did that. You're not fulfilling the mitzvah of Yom Tov. Because Rabbi Eliezer would say, I am a shabeach. I praise the lazy ones who don't leave their houses on the holiday, because it says, V'samachto ato v'secha, and the understanding is that you should rejoice with your wife, and this would be a contradiction if you're going to travel and come to visit me, then you're not rejoicing with your wife. And so Rabbi Eliezer didn't agree to this concept of going and to be makabel pnei rabbi beregel. That's what it seems like. Gemara says, how could that be? Rabbi Yitzchok holds you have to go be makabel pnei rabbi beregel. It's a chayav. You're obligated to go to your Rebbe on Yom Tov. And he brings a pasuk, which it says that the Isha Hashunamis, the woman from Shunam, she told her husband to send to get someone to take her to the prophet, to Elisha, and he asked her. He says, "Why are you going? It's not Shabbos, and it's not Rosh Chodesh, it's not Shabbos. Why are you going?" So you see from there that on Chodesh v'Shabbos you're mechuyev to go to your Rebbe, and the Gemara understands that that would mean that you're obligated to go on the regel, on the Yom Tov. So on that, the Gemara answers that if you're gonna go and come back in the same day, then it's a mitzvah to go. But if you're gonna go and you're not gonna come back on the same day, so then there is no mitzvah to go. In fact, you're not supposed to, or at least Rabbi Eliezer holds, you should stay in your house and not be makabel pnei rabbi, not go to your. So that was pretty much the Gemara that we learned yesterday. And a number of questions that are asked in the commentaries. One of the questions is, why didn't Rabbi Eliezer go to the Beis Hamikdash? And why was he doing at home? He's in Lod. What about going to Yerushalayim? Isn't you would think that he should be a L'regel. So, of course, the simple answer is maybe it was after the Churban. But the other answer that they give is he was in Nidui. He was excommunicated. So maybe he was not allowed to go to be Eila Regel because he was Menuda. There's Gemara's about it that Rabbi Eliezer was put in Nidui when he didn't agree to the rabbis. Anyway, so because of that, he was exempt. And his student went to be Makabel Pnei Rabbi. He also he had an obligation to be Makabel Pnei Rabbi. He also would have been considered exempt. So there was such opinion, such an understanding, at least brought down in the commentaries, try to deal with that. But then there's the other question over here, and the other question that we talked about yesterday was the fact that the pasuk doesn't seem to say anything about a regel, anything about a Yom Tov. it talks about Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh. Sounds like you're supposed to go Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh. So we have different answers, numerous answers, about 7 answers that I came across to this question. And one of them was what Victor said about Shabbos sometimes could mean Yom Tov. So the pasuk says, why are you going to your Rebbe? It's not Chodesh and it's not Shabbos. I mean, it's not Rosh Chodesh and it's not Yom Tov. Shabbos sometimes could mean Yom Tov. We find that in the pasuk about in Machras HaShabbos HaShviyas Tispru Chamishim Yom, on the day after Yom Tov. You count, even though it says Shabbos, it means the day after Yom Tov, referring to the day after the first day of Pesach. And so we see that Shabbos sometimes means Yom Tov. So there is such an answer that's given. There's another answer that Yom Tov, if you have to go on Rosh Chodesh, you have to go for Yom Tov. For Rosh Chodesh, yeah, if you have to go for that, for sure you have to go for for Yom Tov. Then we had the other answers that it's all about not working. Days that you don't have to work, that's when you have to go. So women don't work on Rosh Chodesh. It's customary. Women don't do laundry on Rosh Chodesh, and because of that, for a woman, she would go on Rosh Chodesh to Kabul. She would go on Rosh Chodesh to her teacher. For men, it would be Yom Tov, because women are working on Yom Tov to some extent because they have to prepare the food. But the man would be obligated to go on Yom Tov. So that's why. So now the pasuk is talking about her. She's not Rosh Chodesh, not Shabbos. So, she would be obligated to go those days. But for a man, he would be obligated to go on Yom Tov because he's not working. Then you have the concept that's when there's no students there. There's no students. There's no students on Shabbos and on Rosh Chodesh. So therefore, that's a good time for women to go. So but for a man, you see that she's not supposed to go on Yom Tov. Why? Because Yom Tov is when the students come to be you see that the opposite, that they have an obligation to go on Yom Tov. So therefore, the women only go on Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh. They don't go. They don't go on Yom Tov. They're not supposed to go on Yom Tov. It's almost like that the pasuk is saying they don't go on Yom Tov because that's when men go. Then you have there's interpretations about when the Beis Hamikdash was around. Seemingly two contradictory interpretations, because you have Yaris Devash from the Yonis and Ibashitz. He says that in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, they would not go to be Makabel Pnei Rabbi on Yom Tov because you have to go to the Beis Hamikdash. You don't go to your teacher, you go to the Beis Hamikdash. Now that there's no Beis Hamikdash, now there's a mitzvah to go be oiler to go to your Rebbe because it's in place of the Beis Hamikdash. It's after the Churban, then the Rebbe is like the Shechina, and therefore you should go. This is the way Rabbi Yonis and Ibashitz learns. A little different, the opposite really than the Noida B'Yehuda. The Noida B'Yehuda I spoke about this a few times. I think we've mentioned this Shita. The Noida B'Yehuda is really trying to figure out why Shulchan Aruch does not bring this halacha that you're supposed to go to your Rebbe on Yom Tov to greet him. And Noida B'Yehuda wants to say that it only applied in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. That's when you would do it because there's a Gemara that talks about not standing up for your Rebbe more than twice a day. That because just like in davening, you only daven Shachris, you only daven Shemona Esrei, at least in a obligatory way. It was twice a day, and or at least during the day hours, it's twice, Shachris and Mincha. So therefore, the Gemara says that you can't do more for your Rebbe than for the Shechina. So if you only say Shemona Esrei, you only either Shemona Esrei or Kriya Shema. Different opinions how to learn that Gemara. It's a Gemara in Kedushin that it might mean Kriya Shema you say twice a day biblically, or the Shemona Esrei During the daytime, I guess it's a shachris and mincha, or according to the opinion that Ma'ariv is rishus, it's not an obligation. Basically, you wouldn't go to your Rebbe, you wouldn't stand up for your Rebbe more than twice a day, because for Hashem, you also stand up or you say Shema twice a day. So based on that idea, the Rebbe wants to say the same thing would apply to visiting your Rebbe on on Yom Tov. When time of the Beis Hamikdash, you could go to your Rebbe during for Yom Tov. Why? Because you're Oila Regel 3 times. You could go to your Rebbe also.
But Rabbi, if you go to your Rebbe on Yom Tov and he's at the Beis Hamikdash, then what?
So either you see him there or you see him where he's staying. But at least you're not doing more for your Rebbe than for the Shechina. But the time there's no Beis Hamikdash. So then, if you go to your Rebbe every Yom Tov, now we don't go to the Beis Hamikdash every Yom Tov, but you go to your Rebbe every Yom Tov, that would be giving more honor to your Rebbe than to the Shechina, the divine presence. So therefore, in Shulchan Aruch, it doesn't bring this halacha. This halacha would only apply to the time of the Beis Hamikdash. And they say, and that's why the Rambam brings it. Shulchan Aruch doesn't bring it. But the Rambam, because the Rambam's halachas talks about the time of the Beis Hamikdash, when the time of the Beis Hamikdash is going to be rebuilt. So in the Rambam, it brings such a halacha. It brings a halacha that you have to go to your Rebbe on Yom Tov. The Shulchan Aruch doesn't bring it. Oh, why? Because the Rambam is talking about in the time when the Beis Hamikdash is going to be rebuilt. Then you have a mitzvah of Lakba B'nei Rabbi. The Shulchan Aruch is talking about Zman Hazeh and Golus. There's no mitzvah to be Makba B'nei Rabbi, and because you're not going to do more than you do for the Shechina. So it comes out that argues with Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz. So this is the Noid of Yehuda. Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz said that specifically in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, they were busy to going to the Beis Hamikdash, and the only obligation to go to your Rebbe was after there's no Beis Hamikdash, and in place of the Beis Hamikdash, you go to your Rebbe because your Rebbe is similar to the Shechina. So he specifically says only after the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed is there a mitzvah L'achim Pnei Rabbi. But the Noid of Yehuda would say just the opposite. Mitzvah is only in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, but after the Beis Hamikdash, then you don't go to the to be Makabel Pnei Rabbi, at least not obligation. We can't obligate you to go. Of course, if you want to go, it's not a problem, but you can't be obligated. We don't make obligations for you to do more honor for your Rebbe than Hashem. But not that you can't. The same thing would apply standing up. Not that you can't stand up for your Rebbe. It's that they can't. The rabbis don't obligate you to do more than you do for Hashem. Yes, Victor.
I'm just curious, is this unusual that the example they're bringing for this is for a woman to go visit? It seems to be an unusual circumstance that's the proof they're bringing about this is for a woman to go visit.
Yeah, I was thinking about, well, what I was thinking was like, to what is the criteria of being someone that you have to go to your teacher? In other words, would this apply to someone who's like in today's day and age, there are many great rabbis that, like the big poskim of the generation, Rabbi Feinstein here in America. He was considered, the major posik in his lifetime. So are you called a Talmud of his that you should go to him on Yom Tov and greet him? Or is it more of a teacher personal relationship type of teacher? You know what I mean? What type of teacher are we dealing with? In other words, this Isha Shunamis, what did she learn from Elisha? He would come there. He would have his. She made him his little apartment. So how much did she really see of him? You know what I mean? Did she really study? Did she really study from him? The question really goes further. For a man, he's obligated to go to his Rebbe on the regular. Which Rebbe is this referring to? Someone who he learned the majority of his wisdom from? Is it any Rebbe? Is it a Rebbe that he feels close to? Someone that he learns halacha from? Like it's definitely a vague obligation to how far. And really, it boils down to the source is this lady who we don't know that she learned all of her. This is where she learned her wisdom from. I mean, she must have been quite a scholar, not a scholar. She must have been quite a frum lady before she met Elisha. It's not like Elisha. We don't find that Elisha taught her Torah. It's not like at least it's not clear from there. And to the extent that she even arranged to build him it doesn't say Nasa no Alias Kir Katana that I'm gonna make for that we should make. She told her husband we should make for him an attic. We should make it for him like almost like a separate wing for him to be in. So it sounds like it's not like even when he came like she was really studying from him. So so I'm not really sure. So you're talking about how we're learning from her that this obligation. We're learning from this woman an obligation to go to a rebbe. So it might be saying that might be this might be teaching us something that the obligation is not only when it's a teacher who taught you the majority of your wisdom. Maybe it's specifically talking about such a case because it's giving us an understanding that the obligation is not limited to a rebbe that you learned all your wisdom from. That maybe it's bringing that out because it's this woman who had respect for him and knew that he was righteous, and that's the Indian that you go to a righteous person, Makabel Pnei Rabbi, someone who's a leader in your generation. Maybe you go to your leader to a leader. Maybe it's like by giving this example, it gives us an understanding. The problem is I don't know if it's not in Shulchan Aruch, so it doesn't spell out all the ruling. And the interesting thing also is that the Rambam, when the Rambam brings it, he doesn't make this difference about asi b'yoymei or lo yasi b'yoymei. The Rambam doesn't bring this, so the commentaries all ask. Our Gemara seems to have a limit. When do you have to go? You don't have to go. It doesn't fit with the Rambam. The Rambam brings this halacha, but it doesn't bring the extra qualification. Anyway, I see some people want to share something. I don't know who's first. Ezra.
Maybe she learned anivut from Elisha.
Right. She might have learned something, but is that called just because you learn one thing from someone? And you know what I mean? Is that
But
like
don't we say that we learn more just from the way they act? Like in other words, your teacher, not just what he teaches you, but how they act. We learn more from the way we see, the right way to do things. That they act a certain way that teaches us even more than just the teaching.
So you're reminding me of 2 points. One is that being mashamish, to be mashamish Talmud Chacham is greater than learning from them, because when you're attending to them, I guess you learn more. But the other thing is that the gadol shimusha yosem elimuda, right? It's greater is being mashamish, attending them more than learning. And then the other point is sichas chulin shel tamidei chachamim tzrichen lim, that even their mundane talk deserves study. It doesn't mean that you learn more from that. I don't know, but it definitely does. Even their mundane, even when you just see them around, there's you hear them in their regular talk. There's stuff to learn from them. So yeah, there's definitely a concept there. The question is, does that mean that? So are you understanding it that she learned so much from him that this is because of he was hanging around in her house? I don't know. I don't know if you could say that she learned that much. I mean, she learned anivos. She learned, she saw things with him. But would that be like enough to make someone a pnei rabbi, or the fact that he's a leader? In other words, what is it? Is it the leadership element of it? Is it the amount that you learned? Is it even one thing that you learned from the Rebbe? Is it having diversified your learning from the? You got different areas, many areas that you've learned from this teacher. It's not clear. And what happens if you have a few teachers? Do you just choose one? So in other words, as long as the teacher taught you one thing, then you're yotzif. You go to one teacher the whole Yom Tov, you fulfill this obligation. You have to go to would you have to go to a few if you learn from a few? Okay. There's a good thoughts. I'm just I'm sharing you dilemma that's when you learn the Gemara, it is a little vague, and luckily it's not a halacha now, because otherwise it would be hard to figure out how to fulfill it. Yes, Jeffrey, you're patiently waiting.
Yeah, sure. The story we read recently was about going on Yom Tov to the Exilarch, right?
Right. That's a good. I was thinking about that. Yeah.
But there was an example of a man who was a leader, and you're going to that man to pay him honor and also to hear what his drasha.
Right. Two things. Right. It said two reasons. Yeah. Good. That's a good point. Yeah, I was thinking about that as well. That in what sense was he their teacher? Just because it sounds like he's a leader. That's sort of the message I'm getting from this is, maybe if it's a great leader, that would be someone to go and visit on Yom Tov. That to be, especially because unless we can learn from that, unless we can look up that story, find out if they were his main students, or he was their main teacher. If that's the case. But it sounded more like he was the leader, and they wanted to give him honor. So and Rashi understands that that's the mitzvah of lahakol pnei rabba. So and here also it sounds very similar to that, where she's not claiming that he taught her all of her understanding, her knowledge. She probably in fact, she was capable of discerning that he's a tzaddik, even before when he came. She already was able to discern. So she must have been a special lady, a knowledgeable lady in the first place, to even have that ability to see through him. And but maybe because he's a great. That's the picture that I'm getting here. That maybe it has to do with the greatness, and not necessarily you learn from that Rebbe. And if that's the case, then it shows us why it picks a case of a woman, because the woman, she's not learning in a base medrash all of her knowledge. She's not, she's going there because she wants to show respect to the greatness of this man.
Very good, very good. Thank you very much.
So that might be it. Yes, Moshe.
I just want to say that I heard in New York that Sarah Amenu and Abraham Avinu, they did not communicate verbally. They said actions were more important than words. This was a rabbi in New York who made this statement. If this is any significance, in the subject that we're talking about now.
Yeah. Okay. Good line. And along what we were saying a little earlier about you learn from people's actions and people's mundane talk and other how they act. Yeah, definitely a good point. Thank you, Moshe. So about the Rambam not bringing, the Gemara here seems to conclude that when do you have to go to your Rebbe? When is it a mitzvah to go to your Rebbe? The mitzvah to go to your Rebbe is if you can come back in that day. And if you can't go back in that day, then there's a problem. You go to your Rebbe, you're doing one mitzvah, but you have a different problem, the fact that you're not celebrating with your wife. So what comes out is that you're not mishoifse, according to Rabbi Eliezer, you're not called shoifse regel. You're not celebrating the holiday problem. So he was angry at Rabbi Loi, Rabbi Loi for coming on Erev Yom Tov. And this is Rashi adds in over here. He says he came there Holach etzlei me Erev Yom Tov. He came to him from Erev Yom Tov, and he told him off. He says, "Why do you do this? You're not shoifsei haregel." So what that means is that if he would have been walking distance and within the tchum, so then it wouldn't have been a problem. Then it's a mitzvah, it's chayiv. But otherwise, he's exempt because you can't go. If you come to me, that means you're going to come Erev Yom Tov. It means also that you're going to. It means that you're not going to be celebrating with your wife on Yom Tov. So therefore, Rabbi Eliezer held that it depends, how far you are, and in your situation, Rabbi Loi was not supposed to go to be Makabel Rabbi Beregel. So that's the way Rabbi Eliezer holds. So the commentaries want to say that the Rambam says this is Rabbi Eliezer's shita because he was angry at Rabbi Loi. Not necessarily is that the way the Reb Yitzchok really holds. Because Rabbi Eliezer sort of qualifies Reb Yitzchok's statement, but we don't pass him like Rabbi Eliezer. So Reb Yitzchok's statement might be applicable to in all cases. Yechayev l'kabel pnei Rabbi Beregel. And that's why the Rambam doesn't make a difference between how far your Rebbe is and how, if he's not far, if you have to go there for Yom Tov. So Rebbe Eliezer says, you have to celebrate with your wife, and it depends on the situation. You live far, you can live close, but according to Rabbi Yitzchok, who says Yechayev l'hakam b'nei Rabbi Beregel, not necessarily does he agree with that limitation of Rabbi Eliezer, and therefore he would hold you over Yechayev to be Makabel b'nei Rabbi Beregel. I should also mention, while we're at it, that the Ritva here, we mentioned it yesterday, that the Ritva says that he makes like a difference how far the person lives regarding, like, number one, if the Rebbe lives in your city, so then it's one halach. If he lives within the tchum, within the outside your city, outskirts of the city, 2,000 cubits, then it's another halach. And then if he lives outside of the tchum, that means that then it's a third halach. So if he lives within your city, mamish, you're supposed to go every day to your Rebbe. If he lives outside your city but within the tchum, so you're allowed to go on Shabbos, so then you're supposed to go on Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh. And if the Rebbe lives outside of the tchum, so then you can't go on Yom Tov. So then you would go on Chol Hamoed. You can't go on Yom Tov because you can't walk there. But you go on then it would be a mitzvah to go on Chol Hamoed. And so the Isha Hashunamis, she her situation was that he was out, I guess, within the tchum, so she would go on Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh. That would be like that was the understanding. So, but if the Rebbe lives outside of the tchum, then you would go on Chol Hamoed. The problem with that is that Rashi over here is learning. It's not a problem. It's just Rashi doesn't seem to hold that way. Rashi seems to hold that it's that we're dealing with it. This was on the first day of Yom Tov. It wasn't just Chol Hamoed. He was going. It was the first day of Yom Tov, and that's what's that was the issue over here. So it's outside the tchum, and our Gemara holds, at least Rabbi Eliezer, that at least according to the conclusion of the Gemara, it's the mitzvah would only be if you're the mitzvah would only be if it's walking distance. Knows if it's dazel v'asa b'yomei, you can go there and come back in the same day. Then you have a mitzvah to go. In any event, these are the different commentaries, different explanations of how to reconcile the pasuk with the conclusion that says Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, and really it means regular. Anyway, so those are a number of the answers that are given. There is another discussion over here about what was he? Why is he saying I'm Shabeach? It sounds like a strange language. I praise the people who are the Atzlanim, who don't travel. I'm praising these people who are lazy, that they don't go out of their house. So I praise them. Why? You don't go on your regal. Atzlanim, these are people who want to be fulfill the mitzvah, right? No, I praise them. The Atzlanim. So the commentaries say, yeah, there's two groups. There's a group that does it for the mitzvah. They don't leave their house because they want to fulfill the mitzvah. But then there's also lazy people. Even during the week, they don't go. Even when it's not Yom Tov, they don't travel. They're lazy. The people who are lazy. And so Rabbi Eliezer says, even them, who even if it wasn't Yom Tov, they wouldn't come to be Makabel Rabbah. Even if, they don't go out, they never go out. But you know what? I praise them because on Yom Tov, at least they don't transgress this inyan of celebrating with their wives. So in other words, he's saying that even the people who, not because of the regal, because of the Yom Tov, they stay home. Even they generally are lazy. Nevertheless, I still praise them. The other people, they're doing a mitzvah. But these people, even the people who aren't doing a mitzvah, I praise them because at least they're fulfilling the mitzvah of a samachta, being misabeach with on Yom Tov, at least they're fulfilling it. In other words, even though it's shaloi lashma, bottom line is what he's saying is even though they're not doing it for the right purpose, they're doing it for because they're just lazy. Nevertheless, I praise them. They're fulfilling the mitzvah properly, and at least they fulfill this mitzvah properly, even though it's not for the right intentions because they're lazy, which is interesting why that would be. In other words, does Rabbi Eliezer hold that with all mitzvahs, that even if you do them shaloi l'shma, if you do them for the wrong purpose, why is he praising the lazy people? Because they end up fulfilling a mitzvah. Okay, does that mean every mitzvah that you fulfill? Is there certain mitzvahs that if you do shaloi l'shma, not for the right purpose, they're still good? Or is it specifically this mitzvah? Is it specifically this mitzvah? Or is it any mitzvah? He's saying, all mitzvahs. Maybe that's the Rabbi Eliezer Shita, that mitzvahs that you do, even if you do them for the wrong purpose, at least you're fulfilling them. Or maybe mitzvahs that have to do with Avos Yisrael and that have to do with other people. Maybe those mitzvahs you fulfill, even though they are doing it for the wrong purpose, but at least you do it if it's a mitzvah bein adam lachaveira, it's between man and man. In other words, samachta, here it's v'samachta ata veisecha, you're rejoicing with your household, so it's sort of like a combination of mitzvah between man and Hashem. But maybe those mitzvahs that even if you do them for the wrong purpose, at least your family is enjoying it. So maybe that would be a good reason why he would be saying this. And Rashi spells this out. It's not like Rashi says, even though, look at how Rashi says it, even though shaloi b'shvil haregel masakf, they're not staying home because of the holiday. They're not doing it for the holiday. They're lazy all year round. Even though they're lazy all year round, nevertheless, I'm mishabeach, I praise them. Like it's. This is the way Rashi. You would think it's like from a later commentary. Rashi says this. This is a shot that I'm praising the Atzlan. The reason Rashi says it, I guess, is because number one, it's a surprising term. Why does it say that they're obligated? Just I'm praising them. And number two, why does he call them Atzlanim? Tell them I'm praising the people who stay home. You don't use such a negative, derogatory term, Atzlanim, if they're doing it for the mitzvah. So therefore Rashi is translating it to say that these are Atzlanim that all year round they're lazy. I'm praising them, but maybe that's an interesting thought, that maybe they're doing a mitzvah shaloi l'shma, not for the sake of Hashem, but because it's a mitzvah bein adam lachaveiroi. Maybe it's just a thought. I'm just sharing. I didn't see this anywhere. I'm sharing with you a thought that maybe it has to do with the mitzvah bein adam lachaveiroi, a mitzvah between man and his fellow. When you do it, even shaloi l'shma, Rabbi Eliezer holds I praise such people. Even you do it for the wrong purpose, but at least others are benefiting from it. It is praiseworthy. Okay, then comes the next Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan. So this is where we're up to, Tanu Rabbanan, and we are 2 lines before the wide lines on page 27b. 27b, 2 lines before the wide lines. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, in a brisa. Ma'aseh Rabbi Eliezer. There's a story with Rabbi Eliezer. Sheshavas begolil ha'elyon. He rested, or he spent Shabbos in Golil ha'elyon, in the upper Galil, b'sukkah shel Yochanan v'Rabbi Eloi, in the sukkah of Yochanan, the son of Rabbi Eloi. I guess this is Rabbi Eloi, who we were talking about before, who went to visit Rabbi Eliezer's on Sukkot. So I'm guessing this is his son. I don't know if there were more than one Rabbi Eloi, but I'm assuming it's probably his son. And Yochanan, Rabbi Eloi, this is Yochanan, the son of Rabbi Eloi, and he went to Rabbi Eliezer went to spend the Shabbos there on his sukkah. And the understanding is it's Sukkot. That's the simple understanding at this point. But Kisri, it was in Kisri, and Vamila be Kisarion. Some say it's Kisarion. I guess there are two different places that have said they're both in the Galil Ha'elyon. Must be different cities with this name. And Higia Chama L'Sukkah, and the sun, the shine, the rays of the sun were becoming uncomfortable. They were shining into the sukkah. And Amar Loi Mahu She'efrois Aleha Sadin. So Yochanan asked Rabbi Eliezer, "Am I allowed to put on the sukkah a cloth, a sheet? Oh, wants like a shade. Can I put a shade over the sukkah to protect from the sun?" The simple understanding here is that he's dealing with the laws of Shabbos, Yom Tov. Are you allowed to build? It's called binyan, oil, making a tent. This falls into the category of binyan, and the thing is that it's a temporary tent. If it's a temporary tent, maybe it's allowed. Maybe it's also midrabanan. So there's a he wasn't sure if he's allowed to. They asked Rabbi Eliezer. So Amar Loi, Rabbi Eliezer answered him, Ein lecha kol shevet v'shevet b'Yisrael. There's no tribe among the Yidden shloi hamen mimenu shofet that didn't have a judge from the judges in the judge era. The Yidden had judges between the time of Yehoshua and Shaul HaMelech. They were judges. That was the time of the shoftim. And Rabbi Eliezer basically evaded the question. He just sort of changed the topic. He changed the topic. He's asking him a question about the Hilchos Shabbos and Yom Tov, making an oil and making a tent, and he's answering him that's something to do with about the interesting agadata, interesting insight that every shevet had one of the shoftim was from that shevet. Now, if you look at Rashi, Rashi goes through the shvat, the shoftim, and he says from the time that Yeshua died until Shmuel, that anointed Shaul HaMelech as a king. So until that time was the time of the shoftim. It must have been like 350 years. And Yeshua came from Ephraim. Ehud came from Binyamin. Gideon, Menashe. That's Bnei Rachel. Those are the three tribes that are from the Rachel side of the family. Then you have Rashi brings Shimshon came from Dan, and Barak came from Naphtali, and that's the Dan Naphtali are the Bnei Bilhah, the children of Bilhah. Mordechai, you're see, looks like you're joining twice. Okay. Mordechai, I'm sorry. Dan Naphtali came from Bilhah, and that's Rachel's. That was Rachel's maid, who had done in Naphtali. Then deals with from Leah. So you have Boaz. Ivson was Boaz. That's from Yehuda. Eli came from Levi. Eli Hakoyen. He's from the tribe of Levi. And Toila came from Yisachar. Elon came from Zvulun. And these are the ones that we know. And then Rashi says, Osniel, Yiftach, Shamgar, Yoyer, Abdon. We don't know which Shevet they came from. And then he says, Reuben, Shimon. From Reuven, Shimon, God in Asher would be from Zilpah, and Reuven and Shimon from Leah, Loi Matzasi Mefurish. Rashi says, I don't know which one is linked up with what, but we have a number of Shoftim that we don't know their tribes, but now we know one of them came from Reuven, the other one from Shimon, the other one from God, and the other one from Asher. So anyway, Rabbi Eliezer sort of like changed the conversation and mentioned about every Shevet had a shofet. Then came the sun started bothering them a little more. Now the sun wasn't just coming into the sukkah; it's coming to the closer. It's half the sukkah is now sunny. Amar Loi. So Yochanan asked Rabbi Eliezer, would I be allowed to spread out a sheet? Amar Loi, there is no shevet from Klal Yisrael that the Nevi'im, that the prophets didn't have a prophet come from them. Every shevet there was a prophet that came from each shevet. And even shevet Yehuda ben Yamin, even the Yehuda and ben Yamin that didn't have prophets, the Hamidu Malachim al Pi Nevi'im, they at least were they were maybe didn't have prophets, but they had kings that were anointed from or appointed from the prophets. So because of that, every shevet was like special. They either had Nevi'im or they had kings who were appointed by the prophets. And so again, Rabbi Eliezer, he changed the subject. Now, Higia Chamal Margaloisav shall Rabbi Eliezer. Now the sun is shining right on the feet of Rabbi Eliezer. And Yochanan was really feeling bad about his Achnasas Archiv, wanted his Rebbe, great Rebbe Eliezer, felt bad. So Natal Yochanan Sadin Opires allow. So Rabbi Yochanan took a sheet and he spread it on top of the sukkah. He tried twice. He asked him the Shiloh. It didn't work. So Yochanan decided that he's going to take them, paskin himself, I guess. So he took the sheet and he spread it out in the sukkah. Hivshil Rabbi Eliezer talisoi la'achayra v'yatza. Rabbi Eliezer took his garment, his bag, or whatever, his talis, whatever it refers to, some type of a item that he was holding, his cloak, and he
the cloak is what they use here, cloak in the translation.
So he took it, threw it on his back, and he went out, left, and seemingly because he didn't want to paskin yes, and he didn't want to paskin no. If he stayed, it would have looked like he was endorsing it. If he, so and you didn't say no, so maybe he basically was not gonna paskin. He didn't want to clarify this halacha, so he left. The reason why didn't Rabbi Eliezer answer the question straight? It's not because he wanted to change the subject and was not interested in teaching Torah. He only liked to repeat halachas that he heard straight from his Rebbe, and he didn't want to answer Yochanan something that he didn't hear clearly. He didn't have an answer from his Rebbe, so he didn't answer. So in other words, one way of understanding this is that he knew the answer to this shaila, but he didn't want to paskin because his Rebbe didn't say it, and he didn't want to say I don't know because he did know. So therefore, since he knew, he didn't want to say I don't know. He knew, but he didn't want to paskin it clearly either, because he didn't hear it clearly he didn't hear it from his Rebbe. So therefore, he was kept on changing the subject. And when they actually put the sadin on, he just took off. Now, the other way of understanding it is that maybe he was masupik about this. Rashi says, "Shalei rotza lahatir es hadavar." He didn't want to be matir. Sounds like maybe he didn't want to be matir it. That maybe is not such a proof, but they seem to say on that there seems to be an understanding on Rashi that maybe Rebbe Eliezer was not so clear. On the top Rashi on 28a, it says Loi pshita LeRebbe Eliezer. It wasn't obvious to Rebbe Eliezer that that this, about this halacha, and therefore he didn't want to paskin. So in this scenario, it could be that he didn't know. Or it wasn't clear that this is called Maisif on an oihel. In other words, there's a problem about rabbinically if you're adding on to a tent. So is this called Maisif on an oihel when you add on to the tent, or is it not? This is the question over here, and therefore, yeah.
Is it possible in this case he disagreed with his teacher and he didn't want to?
Yeah, no one seems to say that, Shad. I don't know. No one seems to, at least from the Rishonim on the page here. I didn't look up other Rishonim, but from what I see, doesn't seem like they want to learn that he argued with his Rebbe. He seemed to have such a humility to his Rebbeim that he never would repeat anything that they didn't say. I don't know. I don't know if we know of cases then that he argued with his Rebbeim. But he didn't want to ever say anything that he didn't hear from his Rebbeim. So the question is, was he masupik in this scenario? So Rashi seems to learn he wasn't sure. He was in a dilemma in this case, and there is such a pshat that brought down that made that he didn't want to say I don't know because he knew the halacha, but he didn't want to paskin on something that he didn't hear from his Rebbe. So the Gemara says. How did Rabbi Eliezer go and travel to Yochanan's Sukkah? Not that he traveled there so much, but he left there and he went back to his city. Or no, he was in his city first. It seems like he went there specifically for Shabbos of Sukkot, and then he went back to his city. Yeah, that's what it seems like. He started in his city, and then he left his city. Rashi seems to learn this way. That what does it mean Shabbos? That he he spent Shabbos of Sukkot in this city in Galil Ha'elyon, Upper Galilee, and the rest of Sukkot, meaning the first day of Sukkot and the end of Sukkot, he seems like he was home. So how did he do that? V'amar Rabbi Eliezer, doesn't Rabbi Eliezer say, "Ein yotzim misukah l'sukkah," not allowed to leave your sukkah? So the Gemara answers, "Regel acher hav." It wasn't Sukkot. He was sitting. It was sitting in the sukkah, but it wasn't Sukkot. He happened to be sitting. Regel acher, different holiday. Doesn't Rabbi Eliezer say you're not allowed to leave on Yom Tov? You're not allowed to leave. How did he go out of his house and celebrate with Yochanan instead of with his family? So the Gemara says it wasn't Yom Tov. It was Shabbos. It was a Shabbos. It wasn't a Yom Tov. So the first Gemara thinks it's a regel acher for a different Yom. Then the Gemara says no, it was Shabbos. It wasn't Yom Tov at all. So the Gemara says, "V'tifsha le'midi day." Why don't we understand clearly the halacha about building on Shabbos and making a tent, making the tnan? Because we learned in a Mishnah, pekak hachaloin, that if you have a shade for a window, if you have this type of a board that blocks a chaloin, a window, Rabbi Eliezer says that bisman shekoshur v'toloi, if it's attached, in other words, and it's hanging, it's attached, meaning with like some type of a rope, and it's hanging, it's not leaning on the ground, so it's hanging, then paikikimba, you're allowed to close it up on Shabbos. And the reason is because it's prepared for this purpose from before Shabbos. And we consider it as it's part of the building that's there already. It's not, so you're not building something new. The imlav, and if it's not tied, or if it's not hanging, is then ain't piking about. You can't use it on Shabbos. You can't close off this hole or this window on Shabbos, and it's usher. Why? Because you're being moisif. You're adding on to an oil on a tent on Shabbos, and so that's the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. That Rabbi Eliezer says this. Rabbi Eliezer says that you need it to be these two things. It has to be attached and it has to be hanging, not leaning on the ground. Even if it's attached, but if it's leaning on the ground, it's not good. You have to have both. Either way, whether it's tied or whether it's not tied. There's another way of learning it in the Gemara there. It deals with what is benkach ubenkach mean, whether it's tied or not tied, or whether it's hanging or not hanging. Paikikin, you can be paikik, you can close off the hole, the window on Shabbos, because it is considered a addition that's temporary. So the Gemara says, can't you see from there, to answer the question that Rabbi Eliezer prohibits adding on to an oil, even if it's a temporary addition? So here also you should be usher to add on Shabbos. So the Gemara answers on page 28a in the top, Hasam Hudim Avatel, over there by a window. So there you're planning on leaving it. You're planning on leaving it there, and you can't bring a proof because could be over there it's more prohibited, because when you close it, it becomes like part of the wall. You're attaching it. You're making it as part of the wall. Here you're just spreading out a sheet. You're not making it become part of the sukkah. you're going to take it away. You're not going to leave it there. So it's really different. It's more temporary here than in that case. So maybe, so here, the loy mevatel loy, maybe it's not going to be prohibited. And therefore, it's not necessarily so that Rabbi Eliezer would prohibit it. And the way Rashi learns, it means Rabbi Eliezer himself was mesupek. It wasn't clear to Rabbi Eliezer if this was allowed or not. The actual adding on a window, that would have been prohibited, because that you're planning on making it nullified to the wall. So there it would be more prohibited. Here is not, it's much more temporary. Okay, we're gonna stop here. Sei gesund, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.